Hello, everybody. I'm happy that you're back with me. I'm Rika Jean-François. I'm the Commissioner for Corporate Social Responsibility at ITB Berlin. And I'm very passionate about responsibility and sustainability. So I was so happy that we had this, I think, very interesting discussions. It's not just words, but we had some very good options, what we can do, what everybody who's working in the tourism industry can do for sustainability. We just saw this little spot of ECPAT, which is together with the Code International organization to protect children from sexual exploitation of children. So this is also one social issue in tourism which we at ITB really take care of. But there are much more things. When we look at the world as it is right now, there are so many disruptions. It's not only the pandemic, but it's also, there are wars going on. We have refugees, people leaving their home also for economic reasons. We have the discussion whether they should be saved or not when they are drowning in the ocean. We have racism lately in tourism, which has to be discussed in tourism as well. So there are so many issues where from Black Lives Matter, Leave No One Behind, all these discussions normally are not brought on a stage when we talk about tourism. But I thought that we should really talk about it because we can't look away, as well as we can't look away when we talk about child exploitation and children in tourism. We cannot look away if it comes to racism or to refugees or to minorities or to land grabbing. All these human rights issues which are part of our tourism world as well. So I'm very happy to welcome my speakers today. And first of all, I want to say hi to Antje. She is with us remotely. She came in because Jara, who was announced in the program, couldn't make it today. But Antje, I'm very happy to have you. Let me just introduce her. Antje Monshausen holds a diploma in geography. And after first working in Guatemala and Bolivia, she started with Tourism Watch that's a church device service, Bread for the World, in 2008. Since 2012, she's the head of Tourism Watch and Bread for the World. She's also a chairwoman of the Roundtable in Human Rights, and she's vice chair of the children's rights organization ECPAT, from which we just saw the video. And she's also a member of the Certification Council 2/3. And she's also active in the International Initiative for Transforming Tourism. So you see, you have a lady really engaged in all the social issues of tourism. The Roundtable, to explain a little more about the Roundtable of Human Rights, because ITB is also part of a founding member, because I really believe in the cause. The Roundtable builds a trusted network of currently 32 tourism stakeholders from 6 countries. It's a multi-stakeholder approach, and it provides access to expertise, initiates pilot projects, and develops learning materials to support the implementation of human rights due diligence in accordance with the UN guiding principles, which tourism companies within tourism companies, the supply chain, and in destinations. So thank you, Antje, for being with us. Then the next person, also close to my heart, who is not with us because he lives in New York City, is Reginald Charlot. Reginald has served as a managing director, tourism market development at New York City & Company, and which is the official destination marketing organization of New York City, and as well of the Convention and Visitors Bureau for the 5 boroughs of New York City, a position he held since 2017. Reginald is responsible for developing and managing travel trade activities throughout Australia, Canada, Europe, New Zealand, and the United States. In addition to his role at the New York City company, Reginald is board chair of the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association Foundation, which is the fundraising and research arm of the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association. Yeah, thank you, Reggie, for being with us. Before he joined New York City Company in 2008, Reggie worked in sales and marketing positions at Air France, Shoot Magazine, and Thai Airways. And he holds a Master of Science in Tourism and Travel Management from the New York University. So, an expert. Another expert is, next to me, Thomas Bömkes. Thomas is Managing Director of Diversity Tourism GmbH, based in Munich, in Germany. And they are specialized in niche markets like LGBT and medical tourism. And we are working very close together and have developed the LGBT and also the medical tourism segment at ITB Berlin. Since 2010, Diversity Tourism has partnered with ITB. Also in ITB Asia, we have been very active exploring all the markets for LGBT, and the company also operates an online travel portal called Tom on Tour. And they just amended the developing and accompanying of EU fundraising projects to their portfolio. That's what we just heard the discussion before, very important right now. So, Thomas himself, after graduating at Munich University with a master's degree in economics in 1996, Thomas worked as a marketing advisor in tourism in different positions. You see, experts all around me. Another expert is Ibrahim. He is somebody who says that he is a passionate host. He has been working in the hospitality industry since many, many years, and since October 2019 has been responsible for the opening and launch of the Student Hotel here in Berlin, a concept dedicated to the community of students, city explorers, and locals in an inspiring location in Berlin. Previously, Philip spent 18 years with European market leader Accor, who is also very responsible hotel chain. They also support child protection and so on. And most recently, as general manager, he led the Mercure Hotel Berlin City, setting new and innovative trends and also working close with the LGBT community. He's a trained hotel professional and previously held various operational functions, was able to gain experience in sales and distribution as part of Accor's regional team. And in 2012, I also remember that, Philip founded the Pink Pillow Initiative together with Visit Berlin, a very nice initiative for the LGBT community. And this global unique alliance is a hotel collection for the LGBT scene that unites hotels with one thought, that every guest is welcomed as who he or she is. So thank you for being here. Let's jump into the discussion. I think on one hand, now with the pandemic, there was a lot of solidarity and compassion in the society. But on the other hand, I was afraid it was dying suddenly because so many companies struggled to survive and so many tour operators had a problem to survive. So we always hear, and we also discussed that in the panel before already, that there are so many opportunities in the crisis. But is that so from your point of view? Or do people forget and just wanted to start business again? Are there really chances for more responsibility and inclusiveness and diversity if we look at these special subjects we want to discuss now? Is there a chance to overcome old patterns? Philip, do you want to start?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here. It's it's been a long time to be out and with people, so I'm glad to finally sit back on a stage together again. I think you mentioned it when you started speaking. There has been a lot of things going on that affected our lives. For example, with the Black Lives Matter movement, that was very, very all over the press, all over our initial feelings and what was going on. So I think, as people had a lot of time to think back in the lockdown period, probably to rethink, to step back and review whatever has been happening, that was really an effort or a possibility on changing subjects and having a new issue in subjects. Yes, I think that is an issue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah. Thank you also for having me here. At this panel. I also think that there are a lot of problems we have usually, like in the LGBT tourism or with over-tourism, all these other problems we have, and nobody's talking about this at the moment. And I think really when we want to come out after the pandemic, when we want to get over it, because we need to change something, because many people say, okay, we become stronger and better out of it, but you need to do something for it. When you do business like before, nothing will change in the end. And for example, for the LGBT market, what I see is a big problem, that travel for the LGBT community is really essential globally, because we have a lot of LGBT people around the world living in the closet. They cannot be out. Not many people live, for example, in Berlin, where they can, but it's very easy to live an LGBT life. And these people need to travel. When you think about in Asia, in Africa, where really people need to travel to have a few days or weeks in the LGBT community. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. when they cannot do this and they live as a single there, they get really lonely there, and this could be a big problem. They get depression more, and this is a global problem for the LGBT community, I would say.
We will get into that a little later, because I have more questions about that. But first of all, I want to ask Antje, Antje, from a different point of view, from a broader point of view, from the Roundtable of Human Rights. When you look also into developing countries, what would you say? Are there many opportunities in this crisis now for human rights, or is it more the opposite, that human rights are in danger right now because of the pandemic?
I think it's both. First, I would like to really state that I'm quite sure that tourism will change. The question is just how and when. So having the COVID crisis right now, but seeing also other crises like the increase of inequality, the issue of climate change, there has to be changes in tourism. And I think the human rights lens allows us to better understand how tourism is affecting people in the destinations. As we all know, tourism is more than just having a warm bed and a good breakfast and maybe a nice excursion. It's the whole community and the destination where tourism takes place. So understanding who is most vulnerable in the destinations, which effects do our tourism activities as a company, and the Roundtable Human Rights in Tourism is a multi-stakeholder initiative mainly formed from outgoing tour operators in Europe. Their actions, their products, and their management strategies have direct effects on the ground. And to understand this and then developing strategies to operate in healthy communities, I think this is the call of the hour, because we need these healthy communities in which tourism can take place also in the future, and in which tourism can survive crises and interruptions which will be more often taking place in the future than we were used to experience in the past.
Yeah, thank you. I want to go to New York now, to Reginald. Reggie, where are you? What is from the American point of view? Are there many opportunities in this crisis? What would you say?
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone who's watching. I would like to say that yes, there are opportunities for the changes in tourism and how we do business, also how we travel, how we interact with others now. I think there's much more of a keen awareness that there is finally people are recognizing that there is injustices. People are actually speaking about it as opposed to thinking it and not saying the words. So we will have to change. It will happen, as Antje had just said, that business will change. How is the good question? But with the look at how we look at travel and representation and diversity, we look at it in a different lens, looking at it from the perspective of what does diversity mean? Does diversity mean having a person of color on the screen for once and then we're finished? Does it mean having a woman represented once or twice? What does that really mean? It's really looking at and acknowledging what has to change in the bigger picture. And if you're incorporating, and being realistic, I'll be very blunt, being realistic in that the LGBT community, there is racism that does exist, in the sense that, most of if you look at the promotion of trips and tours, et cetera, cater to gay white males, as opposed to people of color, women, lesbians, et cetera, et cetera. So there needs to be that recognition and also conversation to be able to acknowledge that, then to be able to move forward, to be able to offer these type of opportunities to, as Thomas has said, individuals who live in the closet, if they see themselves on publications, in advertising, in certain things, then they'll feel much more comfortable to be able to go out and actually travel.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that really brings us into the discussion of that Black, Asian, minority, ethnic people and women are really heavily underrepresented in the travel industry, and especially in positions of authority. So, and this is something we all have to address, because I think there has not been before the debates right now. There has been, especially here in Germany, but in the States it might be a little different, but there was not enough awareness about racism in the travel industry. So do we have any influence? What is the role of tourism in this discussion? What can we do?
Well, I mean, the easiest way is create positive role models. I think that's what our main goal should be. So speak about what is really possible, what is going on, what is going right. Probably our responsibility now in Germany or in Europe to give people a chance who don't have the same equal chances based on their ethnic background or whatever. That is our possibility and our goal, and should be our main motivation in a daily work. So I can speak as a hotelier for those people working with me, giving people chances who are not probably the first-hand pick to say, or having not the same heritage or the same clear profile like another candidate could be one option. But I think there might be several more than that. And in my or in the hotelier's specific life, I do have two sides of the desk. I always say I have my side of the desk where my staff members are, where I'm a bit more responsible and able to control, hire and give chances. And then there is this responsibility to the 80% of people that we cater to who come in as a guest, where I not always have a chance to fully tell them, do this, do that. And I think in that moment now it is an important, or it's a great possibility of taking a ground and having an opinion and stating something like this. And I think that's what we really can do and should do as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is one question exactly for you, Philip. Yeah. As representative of a youth-oriented hotel, where are you facing racism in your daily work? Or are there sometimes tensions among guests?
Yes, tensions between people living together or being together is quite normal. I don't always think that it has to do necessarily with racism whatsoever, but I would say in a hotel where we have a lot of international students that are already grown up with some sort of perspective of traveling abroad and being open to the world, they bring some sort of openness to the table that does not necessarily have some sort of racial-based discrimination or problems that I could see when I look at a problem. But there is racism in my daily work, obviously. It's not always this racism that you can indicate of somebody insulting you. It's a bit more the way people look at you, people treat you, and it does not always have to be me. But I give you an example of my daily life. When I work sometimes, most likely people would say I'm the security guy of the hotel, which is funny. I laugh about it, but whenever I say I'm the general manager, they're like, oh, really? It's like something so out of hand and out of possibility. So you could name that, and you could face that or place that in that direction, I guess. Yes.
But what can businesses do, Thomas, to include, to improve inclusion, diversity? I mean, diversity is also for women, it's for color, it's for diversity and equality in tourism in practice. So what would you suggest?
Yeah, I think when it comes to diversity, many people, tourism companies in any industry have not really understand what diversity really is. Many, especially in the hotels, they got, oh, that's a great market, it's like the LGBT market or the black people, or great market, we do something, and then because we want to make money, which is a good thing, I love that. But you see this, when they don't have the marketing budgets, these markets are the first ones they don't cater anymore, because they just want to make money with the market. They don't understand what diversity is. Diversity is not a soft skill. It's really, when you do it right, you can make it can be key markets for you. It can become key markets for you because it's not only LGBT. You have so many diversity markets. When you think of religious tourism, medical tourism, all these different travelers have different needs. And when you really cater the needs and really when you go into the market, then it can be really better for your company than when you just work in the average. The most thing I don't like is, we don't target marketing because everybody is welcome with us. This means to me, they didn't understand it. Yeah, they just won't do the average business. So
I think it's the same with racism. It's a big racism problem if people just say, oh no, we don't need these anti-racism policies in our company because we are not racist. Yeah. And then
it has to be authentic. I think we spoke so often about that. Yeah. What is your impact that you give back? So just saying I'm gay friendly or just ticking a box when you have a paper doesn't make you necessarily gay friendly.
No, that doesn't mean. And it's important that you do a lot of training, education also with your staff in hotels, but also in other tourism companies, because when these people leave the company, all their knowledge, everything goes away. You get new people working for you, and they don't understand the market. So you really need to constantly education on this topic, and this needs to be in the entire company, especially when it comes to hotels. Yeah. It needs to be from the reception
to get more people of color into your businesses. I mean, in Germany, it's not the same as in the US because there are many more people. But in the US, I want to ask Reginald, how do you see it? Because I think there are not enough people represented in the tourism industry in the US who are people of color or who are LGBT or who are in authority positions. Are there any role models? How can you explain your children that they can become, that they can have the same career path as anybody else?
Well, I agree with you. Yes, in the U.S., there aren't many people of color in senior roles, in senior management.
I don't hear you very well. Sorry.
I'm sorry. As well as in Europe as well. I think the part of the challenge is the effort of overlooking, possibly, as Philip had suggested briefly, the point about going and recruiting people, but there hasn't been a concerted effort to recruit. In the U.S., there are universities and colleges that are called historically Black universities and colleges, which are I would say 95 to 100% Black universities, such as Howard University, Hampton University, Spelman, or Morehouse. In regards to recruiting, when businesses or companies or DMOs, et cetera, are looking to recruit individuals, they tend to overlook those particular universities. They tend to go to the bigger universities. They tend to go to the NYUs. They tend to go to the UCLAs, those bigger universities that are probably going to be a larger majority white. So there's that whole sector that's missed over that does have the opportunity and the acumen to be able to do business. Now, another thing that needs to be resolved is the fact of, when you talk about a hotel, for example, front office and back office, because in certain places in the US and possibly also in Europe, when you see people in the front office, they are people of color. And I know that in Europe to the US, it's very fine line of race is color, but in Europe you call it immigration, but it all ends up being the same thing. So anybody who is brown, such as anybody who's an ethnic background, who's Turkish or who is from Northern Africa, that's still considered in the context of everything race. So that being said, it's not identifying those individuals or not reaching out to those individuals who can offer something to your organization. And as I said before, it's not the point of bringing the person in to fill that position because, oh, they're black, or oh, they're a woman, or oh, they're trans, et cetera, et cetera. It's really going in and offering those individuals not the front office position always, but actually telling them that there is a marketing, there is a communication, there is a sales position, there is an IT position, there's an internet position in the back office to be able to give those individuals more of an experience than the traditional, good morning, sir, good morning, said person, I'm here to check you in. That needs to be one of the big things that needs to happen both in the US as well as in Europe and around the world. And there also needs to be the recognition that, as Philip, giggled about it, given the fact that, people assume that he was the security guard, that shouldn't be the case. And I think that's part of the challenge. The problem is that people don't assume that somebody who is a person of color can be more than just a security guard. And it's always a stunned reaction when you find out that they are a general manager or they're a managing director or they're head of communications. That is a person of color. I think that's part of the challenge, and that gives the next generation who's coming up the opportunity to see that yes, there is a black general manager, there is a person of color that is a managing director, that there are opportunities that are there to be able to give them, and also helping them mentor and guide them through the process.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really think it's important for all of us. I mean, in all of the sectors of tourism, first to recognize there is a problem, because normally it's ignored, and then second to also to make your own homework, like diversifying your staff or working with associations or whatever, do networking, and also check your marketing if you really want to provide more visibility. There is no representation in general of really representation of people, of persons of color or black people in the industry.
I think.
And speak up. Yeah.
And I think it's important that the tourism industry understands that diversity is really a big chance for every company, and not another marketing thing what we have to do. Agreed. Or another thing. It's not another thing. It's really important when people, also the people working in that company, when they are diverse, when they really felt comfortable in what they do, they give everything for their company. And that is what a company needs in the end of the day, a hotel or an airline. I think we have very good examples now globally. I see the question here for me, because that we have achieved a lot of things in the LGBT community in the past decades. That's true. And if I have fear that we have the risk that we lose a lot now, and I think companies or industries who understood already what diversity can bring them, and I see them also outside of the tourism industry, in other regions like big brands like IBM, Coca-Cola, they are all active in diversity, and I think these companies really got it, and the pandemic can do anything against it. But when it comes to tourism, we have also a lot of companies, also big hotel chains like Accor, they are very active in this. They will also have it, but when it comes to other parts of the world where we had not really LGBT achieved this before. There's a big problem right now, I think.
Yeah, but let me just bring Antje back into the discussion from human rights, from the Roundtable of Human Rights point of view. What do you think is appropriate? Because when we talk about big companies, Google, Coca-Cola, blah, blah, they are in critics for other human rights issues. So how can we handle it? Antje, what do you think? What is the proper management of these issues? I don't hear her.
Sorry, that was my fault.
No.
I think tourism is at the heart of any society developments. So if tourism takes place in a society where there are racistic developments, or where there is a systematic exclusion of ethnic groups, of women, etc., then this is also represented in tourism itself. And there lies a huge responsibility and chance in tourism, because people who are traveling are more open while they are traveling. So having these experiences of getting to know other role models that might be different from home is a big chance, but this is not falling from heaven. I think it's very important that companies assess the political and the society situation in the destinations, and if there is a form of a structural racism or exclusion of specific groups, and tourism companies can have an influence to really act on this and manage and implement strategies to include people. But at the same time, yes, it's quite challenging, and we see that it could go back. And I would like to ask the others in their particular perspective. Right now, people in the pandemic are affected most, who are the most vulnerable. Yeah. So people, for example, migrant workers are first to lose their jobs. People who have seasonal contracts, often women in the hotels, are the first to lose their jobs in such a situation of crisis. So I'm wondering what they could do particularly to be open or to support these vulnerable groups now, because otherwise we are returning to a situation after the crisis, when tourism goes back to a situation where those most vulnerable groups are even weaker in the supply chains, in the workforce of suppliers in the tourism sector. That's my concern.
Do you have an answer, Philip?
No, I'm not. I can't solve an issue that is too big for me, but I would say is we all have a responsibility, a social responsibility for our teams. That is how I lead the team in Berlin, and I think the amount of people who really try to protect their teams and try not to look into what is the most common or most easy goal is higher than the amount of people who does not do it. I hope. I can only speak for German or those people I know, but I'm not sure if this can be solved, because it's more an economic question of how much money do I have, and at the moment so many of my colleagues are fighting with all hands and all arms to stay over water, and I think there is not a clear solution to that. But I do agree that the most vulnerable groups are the first one to be heard, and I think for the after pandemic reaction would be, and that's what I meant, we have to give the same possibility, the same approach to studies and to learning, especially in our industry, which is an industry where it's easy to learn and to grow. We have to give the same possibility and necessities to all groups involved, and that's why I'm so happy to have people like ECPAT, for example, which I work a long years already with within our core, or what we do very precisely at the student hotel. We have movement on the ground that we do support now even more than we did before with my hotel in Berlin. But as I know as well, our founder Charlie McGregor is very much backing up their efforts in Moria, and I think if everybody...
you went to Moria, you told me.
Well, I was not hired, but last year a lot of management teams had the chance to take 3 of their holidays to to spend them in working on the ground with the company called Movement on the Ground in Moria to really experience what it means to be a refugee. I think none of us, or a very limited amount of people, really does understand the feeling, what it means that you have left everything behind, and that is the impact that we can do. And just to underline that, I'm not sure whether it should be always flagged back to the big and large companies, because as well, a small company like the Student Hotel, which has not the same power, but can do the level best in what we do. We organized a ping pong tournament with a partner of ours, Piece by Piece, who are based in our hotel as well. They have Europe's largest charity festival for children. We organized a ping pong event with them together and raised money, which we gave to Movement on the Ground 2 weeks ago. And if everybody does these little steps, we can protect those vulnerable groups more than we could before.
But I think these are they're really best practices of what every company can do or every hotelier can do and so on. But okay, if it comes to destinations, I think, Antje, we also need the policymakers. We need to lobby with the local governments. We need to ask for their help, to lose a broader perspective.
I think it's those two things. It's the one thing where every company stakeholder, every business stakeholder has to be on board to have their gardens clean and their stuff to meet their responsibilities. But particularly, and this is why we have this Roundtable Human Rights in Tourism, that we would like to strengthen our voices also towards governments, because in the last year, for example, we have done a destination supply chain oriented assessment in Thailand and Myanmar, and there were some challenges addressed and identified where the companies themselves has an influence on a big leverage on, which is, for example, the loss of cultural identity, working conditions, economic inclusion. But there were other issues such as land rights or the lack of proper tourism governance, where tourism stakeholders has to demand from governments and from policymakers to be more active. I would like to discuss one thing, because it was also mentioned in the panel before, and I think also in the sessions this morning. Tourism is quite low in margins, so it's quite difficult if we are looking at economic inclusion. We need higher prices for tourism to have better working conditions and having more impact on the economic situation on the ground. So I'm curious to see how this is developing now, seeing all the different trends. On the one hand, having a strong focus on domestic tourism, on the other hand, seeing that this low margin, high number tourism model is severely under threat now in this crisis. So I think there's, going back to this beginning question, I think there's really a chance for change because traveler demands are changing. Destinations get more active in developing domestic tourism, in developing networks in the destinations. So I still hope that there is a positive perspective in this, even though the situation, for sure, it's a horrible situation, and economic survival is now a serious issue for all business stakeholders in tourism.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's a chance, and I think we all believe that also the changing consumer demand will do something, because otherwise, as you just said, Thomas, there are there's a race of new nationalism, there's xenophobia, anti-immigration, and all this makes severe damage to democracies.
But Rika, to ask the question back, is it helping if we limit the possibilities of travel? Because I do agree, it is right if we have more people paying more money for better quality. We have higher margins, but at the same time, don't you lose those people who never had the chance to go out their little village before? And the only possibility for them to travel from somewhere in, I'm not mentioning any bad or good cities now, Munich, a small village in the south, can go to Spain now all of a sudden with a little amount of money to see what other countries and cultures do. So I think we have to find a balance.
That's the democratization of travel which took place, which is an achievement. And, as we all know, now travel is against bigotry and everybody gets educated through travel.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to travel. But we have to find solutions, and that's a big challenge. I think we don't have ready solutions. But Antje, sorry, because I just see that we have 5 minutes back. There is another question which I have to ask Reginald. Because that's also how do you handle the crisis, a question from the audience. We still have the images of the riots in our mind that happened recently. How does the political debate in the US affect New York City approach to tourism? I think it's also part a little bit of the discussion. So what do we do? How do we react? You know, do we drive back or do we drive forward? What do we do?
Well, we clearly need to drive forward. I mean, obviously the interesting part is that the protests that took place in May and have been taking place ever since this is not the first time it's happened. It's happened almost every year. There's been, unfortunate murders of Black individuals, unfortunately, very regularly in the U.S. And this all began, if you look at with the American football player Colin Kaepernick, who was kneeling for social justice, and how he was ridiculed and criticized for disrespecting the American flag. But in essence, nobody listened to what he was saying. This is only 5 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, that he was saying, I'm protesting the social injustice of people, not the American flag, but of people. And then that kind of fell on deaf ears and people criticized it. And now Black Lives Matter took place when there was another murder in Ferguson, Missouri. And people listened, but didn't really pay attention to it. When I was in Europe and when this was happening, it was on the news, but it was passed very quickly. And now suddenly, now in 2020, now people are starting to pay attention and saying, oh, wow, there's a problem. And yes, it's good. It's bad that it took this long for the US and the world to recognize the issue that was taking place. And so with this is hopefully a drive forward for companies, organizations, individuals, I think individuals most importantly, to recognize that this is something that needs to be moved forward. The reality is that it's not going to, this change of mentality, of feeling and emotion is not going to turn over tomorrow, next week, next year. It's a long process. And if people are committed to doing that, my organization is committed to doing that, and NYC Company is committed to doing that, to go forward and make sure that to go forward with changes and to look at diversity and inclusion and equality and representation thoughtfully and taking it step by step, as opposed to rushing into it and saying, oh, I can make money off of this, I can do this and the other, I can hire people, I can grab people. Just a little side statistic, for Black travelers traveling in the USA, it is a $63 billion US business for Black travelers who travel within the USA. So there is a massive market that's being missed because people just don't look at it in that respect. The same way that people look at the LGBTQ travelers spending money when they traveled, LGBTQ travelers spend a lot of money. So these are moments in time that should not be dismissed or looked at and saying, okay, well, you know what, it's 3 months later and things have calmed down a little bit, we don't need to worry about this any longer. Absolutely not. This is the time after 3 or 4 months that it should be taken forward even further to actually go through the process of companies hiring diversity and inclusion organizations and firms, consultants, to help them understand, not only the US, but internationally. When I travel for work, and yes, I know that in Europe, the population is a little bit different, a little bit skewed, but when I'm in meetings, I'm usually the only person of color in that meeting. Why is that? And that goes to the question that Antje was asking, the question of how do we transform this in regards to, the most vulnerable people that are the most vulnerable people to the pandemic are immigrants and or people of color that happen. But why does that happen? Because those individuals are the ones that tend to be hired for the lower paying jobs. Why is that? Why can't those individuals be hired for the higher paying jobs? If those individuals have the degree or whatever have you, if they're immigrating from another country where they have a degree of a law degree, or they have an engineering degree, or they have a communications degree, why are they being put into positions, being hired in positions at hotels or DMOs or any other tourism organization to become the housekeeper? for
Reggie, thank you, Reggie. I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you because we got 1 minute left in our studio here. And this just shows us that there is so much demand for such a discussion. I mean, Antje, we couldn't get to an end with the discussion. And Reggie, I would have loved to have another hour to really discuss these issues. But we will keep on doing it. We will be next year at ITB, whether digital or whether however it will be, we will continue the discussion. So thank you so much for all of you. And let's stay in touch. And yeah, I think we all agree that we need to do something, that we need to continue to promote, even if there are bad times. We can't go behind the curtains. No. We really have to speak out and address all the difficulties which we might meet in the tourism industry. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.